Hello, my name is Daniel Carr, and this is my packaging portfolio for my 3D packaging class at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, taken during the Summer A semester. Here we'll be showing 3 different projects that I created over the course of this semester. In my first assignment, I chose a product with an unappealing packaging and redesigned it myself. The second assignment had me tackling a charity or social issue and talking about it using the packaging and the contents within. Finally, my last project had me examining into a particular brand and learning what made the brand stand out, as well as educating people about the history and the workings of the brand. For my first assignment, I took a look at various products that I used every day, and eventually I decided that I would choose a food packaging. I was at a Regal Cinemas movie theater, and they had begun to sell their movie theater popcorn in microwave packaging. I enjoy their popcorn, but the packaging is terrible for this box. The color scheme was a bland mix of yellow and white. The Regal Cinemas logo is hidden on the side of the packaging, and overall the piece looked unappealing as a whole. Taking a look at the brand identity, I had determined that Regal Cinemas logo was actually very vibrant, and I decided that I would need to follow suit with this throughout my design. I attempted several designs to capitalize on this, and I ultimately went with this third one. Once I had decided on a design to go with, I elaborated upon it and created the various edges for the piece, putting them into this final mock-up. Mocking up the piece, however, was the easy part. Now was the process of printing it out and cutting it in order to get the finished boxed product. Because I did not have any spare boxes yet, I simply used the actual box of the popcorn in order to make the comparison. Also, because my printer was acting up at the time, I had to get this printed somewhere else. And while it took a few tries, this was the result I had by the end of things. It turned out that the piece wasn't quite as big as I had initially meant it to be when I finally printed out, so I added some colored edges to the piece to make it stand out better and cover up the holes that I left. All in all, I am very pleased with this assignment, though if I were to do it again, I would probably add more colors to the entire piece besides just yellow, and incorporate the red and green more effectively into the general design process. My second design was more complicated than the first, though ultimately I feel this is one of my favorite pieces I've done all year, and one of my favorites in terms of creativity. I had to choose a charity or social issue to champion for this design, as well as create a package and package materials to contain within the package to follow up on this. Because I am autistic, I decided that the social issue that I would tackle with this project would be autism awareness. The symbols of the Autism Society of America and symbols that would represent the autism spectrum in general are the puzzle motif as well as the puzzle-marked folded ribbon. I knew that I had to incorporate these 2 symbols into my final package design for the autism package. While I went through multiple different ideas for the Autism Awareness package, I ultimately decided on a piece that would incorporate many different select puzzle pieces, and putting them in a box covered in the autism imagery. I decided that I would include, inside the box, an actual puzzle that the person with the box would be able to put together themselves, as well as include a paper ribbon that had been folded into the proper size and shape. While I absolutely loved this idea, and the outside imagery for the box turned out wonderfully, the puzzle itself was rather tricky. My pair of scissors was too big and clunky in order to make the delicate cuts that I would need to make in order to make the puzzle pieces distinct and separate, and I nearly figured this out the hard way by almost mangling a few of my pieces. In addition, the pieces proved to be flimsy when printed out of standard paper. Thus, I glued the printed puzzle piece design onto a leftover piece of cardstock I had from an earlier project. In addition, I used an X-Acto knife that I had from another earlier class to cut delicately along the lines of the puzzle piece guidelines. The ribbon was fairly simple by comparison. Even if the ribbon was the improper size to fold and make symmetrical, I could simply cut it with a pair of scissors to make it more symmetrical, and I feel that the way I did it made the piece turn out very nicely. If I were to redo this assignment, I would probably have chosen a smaller box. As it stood, I was only able to get a box about this size at the time I had made this. My third assignment was honestly the most confusing one for me, and I had to guess on what sort of thing I had to create for this one. The brand extension assignment, from what I had gathered, meant that I had to take a brand and create a packaging to represent the brand in its own unique and educational way, while maintaining the brand identity of my chosen brand. At first, I had absolutely no idea what brand to choose, and I finally ended up choosing Nintendo, which I had plenty of products available to demo for the box. Luckily, the idea to use Nintendo branding was accepted, and I began working on my box. This box was much more complicated than my previous assignments, and I am the proudest of this one compared to my other ones. The outside of the box is Nintendo red and white with various Nintendo imagery scattered all over the box. I do feel the roof was ultimately a bit sparse in hindsight. If I went back to this assignment, I would add more imagery on the top of the box. Regardless, I included fun imagery of Nintendo's mascots like Mario and Link on the box. Around the sides of the box, I included question mark blocks on the sides of the top of the box, while a timeline circled around the outsides of the box. This timeline spanned all the way from Nintendo's founding in 1889 to the present-day release of the Nintendo Switch. On the inside, I glued red cardstock onto the inner sides of the box to make it more cohesive with the Nintendo theming. This was harder than it looked, because I had to cut every piece of cardstock into the exact right size, as well as do the same thing for all of the white outer pieces on the outside of the box. On the inside of the box, I included a Super Nintendo game cartridge, a Nintendo 64 game cartridge, a Wii Remote, an original Game Boy Advance, a Game Boy game cartridge, and a Nintendo 3DS. If I had an opportunity to work on this again, I probably would have made the inside of the box more appealing, and possibly even put packaging internally on each item in the box. Unfortunately, this proved to be far too time-consuming for me to redo for the portfolio. When it came to my branding for the final portfolio, I went with my standard icon that I like to use to represent myself. Because I love fantasy media, Dungeons & Dragons, and World of Warcraft in particular, I decided to go with a shield and sword motif, with a sword present in many of the designs as well. My initials, DC, were included to tie the piece to me personally, and they were written in red, which is a color I like to use to identify with myself and my work. I went through multiple iterations of this sword and shield motif, but I eventually decided on the first one that I made, which I feel works the best with my style. In conclusion, I feel that I have advanced rapidly in my work as I have taken this class. My first piece transitions into my second piece, which transitions into my most polished third piece. If I had more time and more experience, I could have completed these even more satisfactorily. But ultimately, I am pleased with what I have created for this class, and I hope to be able to create more polished pieces in the future as I continue to take classes at the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design.